So as promised from yesterday's video, we're going to talk about Tulsi Gabbard suing Google and a few other issues with Tulsi that we may not have got to really dig and dive into too much yesterday. So the very first here being, before we get to the Google issue, first and foremost, I was actually wrong yesterday. Apparently, I have had it. I said it backwards. Apparently, Tulsi has enough individual donors, but apparently the issue keeping her out of the upcoming debates is that she's actually not polling above a certain threshold. We're going to get back to that in a minute because I smell a huge rat in the room. A huge rat in the room. Okay, there's definitely some trouble brewing from that whole issue, that she's not polling at the proper percent. But first, let's get to Google. So, a lot of conservatives have been trying to say within the last year that Google and YouTube and the internet is censoring right-leaning conservative voices, and there is many examples of that taking place. Okay, whether you agree with everything Alex Jones has to say, I'm quite sure the majority of the people do not, such as the Sandy Hook issue, and I'm not going to hold that against. Alex Jones can certainly come across like a complete nut when he wants to. Okay, I've watched some of his stuff. There are certain things I have to give credit where credit is due. Alex can talk about that he does make sense of. Some of his conspiracy theories I kind of find questionable about the deep state and the agendas against the people. But lizard people, water turning the frogs gay, all that crap, nah. I mean, I'm not buying into all that. I'm not buying into all that. But overall, nonetheless, as gruesome as it might be, as foul of a language as it might be, people have a right to freedom of speech. Now, a company could set terms of service, okay? They could set terms of service, and they could say, you're only allowed to talk about certain issues on our platform. However, you need to be fair in where you apply those rules before you start blacklisting people. So, of course, Alex Jones covered very many controversial topics, probably offended a whole lot of people. And without a doubt, he is what a lot of people consider nowadays the alt-right, okay? But at the same time, there were plenty of people over on the left who were saying plenty of controversial things on that side of the aisle as well. So, where should we start? Now, I believe they've actually banned this guy now as well. But Louis Farrakhan, for example, okay, you had all the stuff coming out of Farrakhan. You had, people on both sides of the aisle, left and right, taking things to an extreme, people found to be offensive, highly offensive, but there's no censoring. There was no censoring of, someone holding up the severed, or what was supposed to be the severed head of the president. Now, of course, she got huge backlash from that. Okay? She got huge backlash from it, without a doubt. But that came just because of people actually being outraged and making it a big deal. And of course, then it got covered in the news. But it didn't get covered. And it didn't get just completely, tramped all over. She didn't get her account suspended. She didn't, she wasn't blacklisted from the platform. Okay? There's been people who've made threats and said very nasty things about white people or Trump or this, that, and there's nothing happening to them. Okay? And there's a lot of examples we could dig into that. Nothing's happened. However, I know people are thinking that I'm feeding the argument that it's all against the right, but I'm not. Okay, I'm not sure exactly what Google and social media's double standard is here, because it is not just against the right wing. It's against, in my opinion, minus a couple of people like Alex Jones who just genuinely push the envelope a little bit too far. To me, it seems like they are bought and paid for, or they're buying and paying for, rather, these politicians. Just like we've been talking about. Okay? That being said, the people who control the world don't like well-informed people, because if you're informed, you may figure out how to fight back, how to take your country back, how to take your government back. If you're too informed, they can't blindfold you anymore. They can't, as my grandma used to say, pull a wool over your eyes anymore. And you are now no longer a sheep following the sheep herder. You can now walk on your own. You can now think on your own. And they don't want the message of certain other people, and this is where I say it applies to the left. They don't want the people who are going to tell the genuine truth to the American public, whether they be on the right or the left, minus the people on both sides who are too extreme, that it's violating their terms of service, so they're taking them down. However, even for those people, the one thing that I will say is, in my opinion, okay, if you own a platform, and if your platform has kind of monopolized the industry, you're the only one out there offering that service. In a world today where many people are doing what I'm doing right now with a YouTube channel, or promoting things with their Facebook page, and there's only these platforms to do it on, there's no competitor, there's no competition. Teddy Roosevelt would not be a happy camper right now with what we have from Silicon Valley, because you've only got those options. And any other thing that may be similar doesn't have enough traction behind it for people, for you to really even attempt to gain any sort of an audience. Okay? So, to me, if you're so big that you're the only one people can use, you shouldn't be allowed in this country to violate their constitutional amendment. That's something that I've heard Kyle Kulinski say, Jimmy Dore say, Mark Dice say, and I think that that's something right, left, and independent can all agree upon if you really want to go off of the United States Constitution, in my opinion. Okay? Now that that rant is over with, Tulsi Gabbard, after the first Democrat debate of this election cycle, attempted to put an ad out using her Google ad account, because, and I don't think she knew this at the time, but it was a strategy. She was trying to promote herself. Now, it turns out she was the most searched candidate from the first debate and from the second debate. But after the first debate, before she knew she was the most searched candidate, she planned to put an ad out to promote herself. And Google suspended her ad account. Now, we talked about that a little bit yesterday. Okay? Google suspends her ad account, reinstates it 6 hours later. Everybody's in bed. The debates went off late. They did a little bit of research, and before you know it, within a couple of hours, they're laying in the bed calling pigs. For those of you who are not familiar with my obviously very southern cliche, that means snoring, sleeping, okay? So, no one was surfing the web except for some random night owls probably by the time they reinstated it. So her ad was a complete... And of course, Google's explanation for this is, oh, well, we noticed some strange activity and blah, 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 blah. More of the old party line, talking point bull crap. Now, so she's suing Google over this. So let's hear from Tulsi why she's suing Google over this.
We've done a lot of work on this program to expose the bias and corruption at Google, which is the world's most powerful company by far. But Google and its employees don't just have it out for conservatives. We want to make that clear. Google is hostile to anyone who challenges the status quo, since Google is the chief beneficiary of the status quo. Congresswoman and presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard learned that the hard way. Just after the first presidential debate, where Gabbard was the single most searched Democratic candidate, Google blocked her from being able to buy new ads. Now she's become the first presidential candidate to sue Google. She's accused them of censoring her message. We are happy to have Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard join us tonight. Congresswoman, thanks very much for coming on. Tell us
Thanks, Tucker.
The point of this suit.
Here's the bottom line. This is really about the unchecked power that these big tech monopolies have over our public discourse, and how this is a real threat to our freedom of speech and to our fair elections. So this really isn't about me. It's about taking action on behalf of the American people. Because we've got to understand here that if Google can do this to me as a sitting member of Congress running for the highest office in the land, then that means they can do this to any candidate running for any office anywhere in this country, and frankly to any person in this country. And that's why it's so important that whether you're a progressive or conservative, whether you consider yourself on the left or the right, we all have to stand united to protect our freedom of speech. Because, look, today it's me, tomorrow it could be you or someone else.
Yes, that's exactly right. God bless you, by the way. Why are you the only candidate who's saying this?
I can't explain that, Tucker, but I do know how important it is that we protect our freedoms in this country. It's something I think that people take for granted unless they're the ones under attack. These freedoms are enshrined in our Constitution. I love our country. I love our people. This is why I'm standing up and fighting for these freedoms, even when these freedoms allow those who say things I may disagree with to have that freedom to do so. You know, as a soldier, these are the principles that I stand up for, that even though you and I may disagree on things, I'm willing to give my life for your freedom to do so.
So you filed this lawsuit, and God bless you for doing that. What should lawmakers in the Congress do to rein in this dangerous tech monopoly called Google?
Washington needs to act. There's no question about it, because we're talking about Google, Facebook, Twitter. These are big tech monopolies that have this unchecked power to influence our public discourse, to influence what kind of information people are seeing. Google is in control of 88% of all internet searches in the United States, and I believe it's 92% of all internet searches in the world. So Google is controlling, when you type into that Google search box, what pops up, the information that you see. So it's important that Congress takes action, because right now this is unchecked. They've got their secret algorithms. They can control the information that we see. They can control what pops up in our Facebook feeds, and they can censor voices that they disagree with. Google has spoken openly about how they have shut out those who have not broken any of their terms of use. So this is really what's at stake here, and it is important that Congress takes action to provide this oversight and accountability, and ultimately to break up these big tech monopolies.
So in the 30 seconds we have remaining, are you going to bring this up in the debates this week?
I look forward to doing so. This is such an important issue that is integral to every single one of our freedoms that we cherish and that we all must stand up and protect.
It's so important. I spoke to a right-winger today who I think disagrees with you on virtually everything, and on the basis of this alone sent you money today, because it is that important.
Well, this is America. This is what we're talking about here, this freedom. Thank you so much, Tucker.
Amen. Good to see you.
So I would just like to say, after that little clip. Say what you want about Fox News being too heavy right or whatever you want to say. And I'm not saying that you don't have a point. But who let her on their program to make this case to the American public? Something that I think Jimmy Dore has honestly been getting a little more surprised by lately. Who was calling out the fact that Jeff Bezos wasn't paying taxes and what it was doing to the American worker? Who covered that topic? Who has had Tulsi Gabbard on his program on numerous occasions and let her come on to talk about this topic and talk about the problem with what Google is doing with their algorithms? Tucker Carlson. And while I can see where there's a lot of people who have their issues with Tucker Carlson, I don't agree with everything. Before I make that comment that I don't agree with him on everything, you're never going to agree with someone all the time. But for what it's worth, and for what I do get to watch of Tucker Carlson, I like him a lot better than I do a lot of these other news anchor outlets, like, Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer, Chuck Todd, Lawrence O'Donnell, Brian Williams, Matt Owl, Chris Matthews. The list goes on and on and on of all these people who just beat the drums of war, beat the drums of talking points, beat the drums of money, whatever the people that are putting money in their big fat bank account want them to talk about. And there's very few journalists out there who really still want to hold enough integrity to actually tell the truth. Now, do I think Tucker may not have some of his own bias? Of course. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't, but he lets more subjects on the air, like this one, for example, than any of those other people that work on all these other so righteous and holy news networks. Because, Fox News is the devil. Fox News is the devil. It's nothing but the right-wing devil to listen to these people tell it, okay? And now there are plenty of people who clearly have come around to understanding that CNN is an absolute garbage pile and nothing but pure propaganda, okay? But MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, the whole lot of them. There's just no words for it. There's no words for it, okay? But it's the Fox News channel and a Fox News host, Tucker Carlson, who's letting Tulsi spread this message. Why are the rest of them not doing it? Why is it if Tulsi goes on one of those other networks, the only thing you hear about, why did you go meet with Assad? Why did you go meet with Assad? Why did you say that Assad is not the enemy of America? Why did you be a diplomat, Tulsi? Why didn't you go over there to Putin and wag your finger in his face and tell him, you screw with us and we're going to blow you to kingdom come? That's all that happens when she goes on another news network. And gee, I want to know why they do that. I got a good idea. I got a very good idea. Maybe because they're, running commercials from people who are their sponsors, who have financial interests. For example, I don't know, pharma. Now, while Tulsi's obviously main issue deals with war, I'm sure if we looked into who they take money from, there'd probably be some ties to I don't know, some sort of a manufacturer who has a DOD contract and provides crap for the Department of Defense. Fact check me. I haven't done the research to see just how much they're taking from it, but I'd make a real comfortable bet on it. The same way they're running all these pill commercials, I'll be willing to bet you if you look into their sponsors and the people who are contributing to their networks, they've got ties to the defense industry somewhere. Someone wants to do the research and fact check. If no one does, I may do the research myself one of these days and make a video about it. But I've just got a really big hunch that's why. Because they don't want the anti-war candidate. They want the anti-war candidate who's anti-war on the stage and then goes and starts bombing 7 other countries once they're elected. Obama, Biden, Clinton with the no-fly zone over Syria if she'd have been elected. What she said, she downright said it. Hey, they didn't have any qualms with her because she downright said she would be for war on the debate stage. She said it. I'll put a no-fly zone over Syria. It was very clear. Very clear. She didn't make any bones about it. So they didn't even have to try to cover for her. Not one single bit. And yet Google is not letting someone like Tulsi Gabbard get her ads out. These other news networks only want to talk about the thought apologist. The thought apologist. Yet some of the people accusing her of being a thought apologist back when also were supposed to be against the Iraq war. I think they, of all people, should understand that if the same standard had been applied to them, and in some cases it was, they were at the time being called, I don't know, Saddam apologists, maybe. Yet I think we all look back at the Iraq War and say, yep, that was one big, massive failure. And that is one of the few screw-ups that is the legacy of Bush and Cheney. And all the people who voted to try to go to war in Iraq. Okay? So, there's clear bias there. And Google is controlling this whole spectrum. You know, like what people get to see, what information that they get. And they're too big. They're way too big. You know they're way too big when 92% of the world is using it to do their internet search. And I'll guarantee you when it comes to doing like what I'm doing right now, streaming and promoting, more people are probably using this platform than they are any sort of competition. If anyone knows of that competition that's big enough you could reach a mass audience, put in the comment below because, hey, maybe one of these days I'll have to turn to it. I'm trying to grow my channel, but at the rate things are going, I could be clipped out at the knees before I ever get going. So we'll see. But there's clear bias there on Tulsi. They clearly don't want her message getting out. There's good reason for that. You may not agree with every single one of her policy issues, but she's talking about the taboo subjects that the status quo don't want to be talked about. They want the news to talk about scandals. They want the news to talk about Trump's orange skin and his yellow hair. They want them to talk about him having sex with porn stars and Playboy magazine cover girls. They don't want people talking about the real issues. Tulsi talks about the real issues. Whether you agree with her on how to solve the issues, different story. But she's got a more honest track record than half the people who are running on that Democrat stage. And she at least is more genuine. She's a much more genuine candidate. And you can tell by her own actions, she has more of a connection to the people than the big corporate donors. Okay? Now, with that being said, let's switch gears here for just one little moment. Let's rewind. Remember how I said that Tulsi has not qualified for the third debate. And apparently she's reached the 130,000 gap for the donors. So she's qualified. And there are a couple of polls. Kyle Kalinske just made a video about this. There are a couple of polls out there where she is polling above the right percentage and could qualify for those debates. But the DNC, and oh, isn't the DNC so fair and honest? Let's just go back to 2016 and look at the emails. Wasserman Schultz and the Clintons and Donna Brazile, and look at what they did to Bernie in 2016. Oh, this DNC. Salt of the earth, aren't they? Just so honest. So honest. They're so honest that I'm surprised Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. He must have been a Democrat because his nickname was Honest Abe. It was Honest Abe. He must have been a Democrat. Clearly, I'm being sarcastic. The Democratic Party is chock full of a bunch of corrupt liars. 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 Liars to the point that I feel like that honestly people like Tulsi and anybody like her only run on that platform because at least some of their policies coincide with some traditional Democrat policies, and they know that with the way that the two-party dictatorship has everything rigged, you basically got no chance whatsoever of winning as a third-party candidate. Go ask Ross Perot. He got pretty close, but he dropped in and out back in 92, and that really hurt him. But by the time 96 came around, oh man, the Democrats and the Republicans learned a lesson because there has not been a third-party candidate debating the two main party candidates on the presidential debate stage since 1992. From there on, they have rigged it up and set it up where it's just the two of them. And until there's an uprising, that's the way it's going to stay, folks. That's the way it's going to stay. And so I think that the only real reason that, anybody, along those lines, Tulsi, Ojeda, even Bernie, they're doing this because they know the third party thing is such an uphill battle. They're trying to take over the Democratic Party. But I can tell you right now, whatever your intentions may be, no matter how good they may be, the status quo, the swamp, will not go down that easy, son. They will pull every trick in the book to keep the honest people down. And the Republicans will do the same thing. They'll do the same thing. The two-party dictatorship does not like having their norms messed with. Okay? So, but that being said, she hasn't qualified because the DNC doesn't want to recognize the polls that have her polling over the proper threshold, even though they're perfectly credible polls. So with that being said, we're going to continue the rest of this conversation into a second video. I'm going to start another video because now we're going to get into another issue where I smelled that rat that I was talking about earlier. This video has already kind of gone on and drug on a little bit. So to make sure that, because it was going to run like 45 minutes if I didn't cut everything from right here. So for that reason, we're going to continue this on into a part 2. That way, everyone, if you've made it this far, go to the next video. And people who may have said, oh man, this is too much, you might click on the second video and catch the message here, because since this video is mainly going to be about Tulsi and Google anyway. So now let's get back to the debate thing, qualifications for the debate, and that rat I smell. Tune in to part 2, the next video that's coming up right after this one. We're going to be talking about the issue that has just arose with qualifying for the debates and Tom Steyer. So So I hope you'll join me on the part 2. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Independent Report. If you liked the video, please hit that like button and please subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe, ring that bell so you'll receive notifications when we drop new videos. I'm trying to grow this channel and inform more people of what's going on in the world around them. Thank you for your support, and we hope you tune in next time.